The Courage Under Fire Award is presented to documentarians displaying conspicuous bravery in the pursuit of truth. This year, we not only honor filmmaker David France, but all the activists in the film Welcome to Chechnya, including David, Isteev, and Olga Baranova. Since 2017, Chechnya's tyrannical leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, has waged a depraved operation to cleanse the blood of LGBTQ Chechens, overseeing a government-directed campaign to detain, torture, and execute them. With no help from the Kremlin and only faint global condemnation, activists take matters into their own hands. In his new documentary, David France uses a remarkable approach to anonymity to expose this atrocity and to tell the story of an extraordinary group of people confronting evil. Courageous filmmaking also takes exceptionally courageous protagonists. Olga Baranova's work through the Moscow Community Center for LGBT Initiatives and David Isteev's bravery working with the Russian LGBT Network are part of a network of courageous activists fighting against intolerable humanitarian crimes. With the Courage Under Fire Award, we honor them and all the activists working for LGBT rights in Russia. And we honor David France and the filmmaking team, whose bravery brought this story to international attention. Let's take a look at Welcome to Chechnya. Then, we'll hear more from David France, Olga Baranova, and David Isteev in conversation with Chief Executive of Doc Society, Jess Search.
Скажи, пожалуйста, насколько критична ситуация?
Дело в том, что мой дядя узнал про мою ориентацию вот недавно. Он в любом случае меня убьет.
Аня, мы приедем. Мы начали получать первые сообщения из Чечни о том, что в Чечне происходит массовое задержание геев.
Мы можем поехать, поедет с нами чувак, доедет до какой-нибудь с нами станции, как только я вышел с метро, двери закрылись, и больше ты в России не был.
I wanted to ask you about the alleged abduction and torture of gay men in the Republic.
Это ерунда. У нас таких людей нету.
И практически сразу было решение принято о том, чтобы людей спасать, эвакуировать.
У нас не было такого опыта. Нужно же людей скрывать, нужно их искать им визы, какие-то пути тайные, вывоза из страны. Бегом, бегом, бегом.
Все, у меня, короче, паника начинается. Они будут искать, я это прекрасно все знаю.
Я не буду делать все, чтобы это никогда не всплыло. Изменить ситуацию может только человек, который прошел эти пытки и заявит об этом публично.
Я буду делать всевозможные действия, чтобы заткнуть меня.
So huge congratulations to the three of you. Of course, I know you also accept this award on behalf of others. It takes a movement to do the work that you've done as activists and also to make a film. But my huge congratulations to you three personally also, because I know how much you have done. So congratulations. You've won an award for courage. And in preparation, I was thinking, what is the meaning of courage? And I wanted to anchor our conversation in two quotes. One by the great African-American writer, Toni Morrison, who died last year. And she says, courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue. So David, in your long career of many amazing acts of journalism in print and in film, I know you did do a stint as a younger man as a conflict reporter, but it had been some time, I think, since you've done anything like this. And I must say, when you rang me on Signal from the safe house and explained where you were, I, of course, knowing you as a man who'd made two very beautiful films from archive, was very surprised to find that you put yourself in such a hotspot.
Well, it was the risk that drew me, I think. I first learned about the safe house system from an article in the New Yorker from Masha Gessen, who had visited there and had done reporting from that main safe house that we see and get to know in the film. And I called Masha up. I'd known them for many years, and said, this is just bizarre that that this kind of risk is falling on the shoulders of people like Olga, ordinary, members of the LGBTQ community there. I knew that Olga had set up the community center. She was one of the founders of the community center, which doesn't train a person for taking on these intractable and dangerous powers.
When you watch the film, you understand so clearly the intelligent, calm preparations that are made by the activists. It's like a masterclass in how to take risk in the most impactful way. And I feel like, knowing David, his job as a filmmaker was to step up to this standard of intelligent risk-taking. So I wanted to start by asking Olga and David, one after the other, to talk about how they first stepped into this work and how they began to think about how to manage this risk intelligently.
Ну, если говорить об активизме в целом, то я начала работать задолго до того, как приключилась Чечня.
I started being an activist a long time before the anti-gay purge happened in Chechnya. I was in charge of the Moscow Community Center for LGBT Initiatives.
Московским комьюнити-центром, и в Москве,
and this was one of the only organizations that was working full-time with the local LGBT community.
С ЛГБТ-сообществом, и, наверное, поэтому это одна из причин, почему я была так активно вовлечена в эту работу.
And David?
В активизме я не так давно в Чечню пришел.
I started being an activist a year before Chechnya happened. And Olga is right. We didn't really think about risks. It's like you see a body of water in front of you, but you don't really know how deep it is. But you just go and make waves, and then you find out what the risks are.
По ходу твоего движения. Тогда об этом никто и не думал.
So when David arrived to make the film, there must have been concerns that he would be a security risk for what you were doing.
I won't say that David himself was a risk to the whole operation. It just seemed impossible that someone would make a documentary film about the events that were happening back then. People who were fleeing Chechnya were scared and concerned to speak even to a psychiatrist. And I'm not even speaking about a journalist, right?
So
for the people who were fleeing, for the refugees, this was the risk of being publicly shown in a documentary film.
It's, as you know, David, it's always the first thing a filmmaker has to do is to win the trust of those that we wish to film with, our protagonists. It seems to me in this case that bar was very high, and I want to again ask Olga about that. The bar must have been very high to trust this outsider.
Очень
I trusted Masha Gessen deeply, and I knew her from before. I knew that she was a Methodist and that she knew the risks, and that's why she left the country, essentially. She's a dear friend of mine, and I knew when David France was first speaking to me, I could see that he understood what was happening on the ground. He understood the risks as well. I told him that I could not promise him anything. I didn't promise him anything, really. I said that you have to speak to the people. You have to speak to the refugees and people fleeing Chechnya. And you have to get their trust, and you have to make sure that everything is safe, and that they are safe, and that the whole production is safe.
Тогда мы можем это делать, если вы будете соблюдать все правила безопасности.
David, I remember at the beginning of the project, you had a problem but no solution. And the problem was that you were pretty sure it would never be safe to show the faces of those fleeing refugees on screen, but you didn't initially have a solution to that. So I know that you made the promise to your subjects and to David and Olga and the others that you would find a solution.
Well, I think we should all acknowledge the courage of the people who allowed their stories to be told in the film. The survivors of the atrocities in Chechnya, for whom it's an additional and tremendous new risk to stand in front of the camera and reveal their truths, recapture and reclaim their own narratives. As we continued working on our R&D, we found a VFX artist who was willing to try and build an algorithm that would automate the process. And the process is basically mapping one person's face over another. This approach allowed us to go out and recruit people who are already activists, US-based mostly, and queer mostly, and ask them if they would lend their faces as a kind of human shield to protect the identities of the people in the film. And we ingested their faces into this algorithm, and then did this deep machine learning, this AI mapping of their face, pixel by pixel, over the faces of the people who are in the film. And what the artificial intelligence is able to do is to find the exact micro expression from the donor face and map it over the faces of the people who are survivors.
Right, thank you. I want to move on now to what has happened since the film has come out. And I'd like to ask what aspects of the film's journey have been the most important.
It's very personal. The film is very personal to me. The whole film is very close to my heart because it's my life. When I'm watching the film, I'm looking at my own life. I first performed the security review of the film before the premiere, and I was so shocked that I just came outside and started smoking cigarettes. David wanted to hear what I thought about the film, and I needed to smoke several cigarettes to be able to tell him what I really thought about it, because it's just so personal for me. Yes, and just trying to add that the team saw me watching the film for the first time before the premiere, and I was crying a river back then. It was so emotionally shocking to me that I couldn't watch the film at other film festivals after that. I only managed to see it half a year later at home, when it premiered on HBO, because it was just so personal to me.
And David, the reactions to the film from audiences, from obviously the film world, the independent film world, has been extraordinary. But there's also been quite a lot of political reaction. I mean, not accidentally either. Your team have been brilliant in strategically using the film. What's making you most proud right now about where the message is punching through?
Well, the message, anytime you make a film on a story like this, you want it to impact the conversation. It's moved the needle in political circles, in essential political circles, among European parliamentarian leaders, among the UK lawmakers, and even in the US, that we've seen now a series of new sanctions leveled against Chechnya and Russia specifically for these crimes, and specifically referencing the film as having been, the presentation of the evidence in case anybody needs to see it.
Good. So my final question for all of you: the audience for this conversation will be largely other filmmakers who are either already making ambitious work like David's or would like to. And I would love to know from all of you what final words of advice or encouragement or warning you might want to give to filmmakers that are watching this who are, going to be engaged in similar work.
Я бы посоветовал думать прежде всего о людях, о которых вы снимаете.
I would like to advise the filmmakers to, first of all, think about the people you're filming and about people you're working with. Just think about their lives. The people or the subjects, the characters in your films are going through a lot, and they're struggling a lot. So I just want to say that there might not be even a film in the end, but first and foremost, you should be thinking about these people. Think of humanity first. People are always more important than work.
Надо всегда опираться на человека, о котором вы рассказываете.
Я думаю, что очень важно это терпение.
I would like to say that patience is very important in this kind of work, and not to have any expectations. This film is a great film, and it came out and everyone is safe. But when we first started filming, I wasn't sure if this film was going to come out. And I'm sure David was pretty certain that it was going to come out. As a director, he knew it was going to be a great film, but I wasn't sure so much. So I'm very happy to see that it did come out. But I just want to say to filmmakers not to have expectations and to think about the people always, like David said. Be patient. The people you're filming are traumatized and they went through a lot of trauma, and so be mindful of that.
Никогда неизвестны реакции в фильме и вообще реакции.
I think we'll leave this conversation here. I just want to pull out one or two things that I've heard in summary. David, you've talked about the importance of community, both the LGBTQI community globally and our wonderful independent documentary film community. So I'm being reminded that we can never do this work in isolation, that we thrive when we support each other. And we're hearing from Olga and David that filmmakers really need to put patience and put their own expectations aside and hold that patience. And I think David has really said the most important thing today when he said that people are always more important than work. So once again, huge congratulations to all of you on this award. We thank you for your work. We acknowledge your courage, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you, IDA.
Thank you. Thank you.